Hello, valued viewers. I hope you're all doing incredibly well. This is Gruntmeister of the Grim Reapers, and today we're going to take a look at the capabilities and the usefulness of Total Control's multifunction displays. Wait a minute. That's not right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons. Oh, I'm sorry, valued viewers. This actually isn't your grandfather's MFDs. This is Total Control's Apache multi-purpose displays. Yes, today we're going to take an in-depth look at a set of these MPDs with the desk mount to see just how much better life is when we have physical interaction with MFDs and or MPDs. This is meant to be a hobby-level peripheral for those who just want to take the next step in their simpits or like what the MPDs can offer if you use VR. As said before, and this hasn't changed, Total Controls did not offer any monetary or hardware benefits for a favorable review. For the purposes of this video, we will be discussing what would be shipped to you, first time setup, possibilities and integration of these MPDs in your overall flight setup, comparison between these MPDs and other MFDs on the market, and a few things I'd like to see improved on. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so here is the box that I was shipped. To say it's got a heft wouldn't necessarily be proper, but with disc mounts in there, the package won't so easily fly off into the wind if left outside in a storm. I don't recommend you leave this outside in a storm. Anyway, with the delivery service not necessarily caring about how fragile your package may be, it's up to Total Controls to ensure it will survive the road to your doorstep. Methods used were boxes designed to fit snug within each other, crumbled paper, and bubble wrap to secure the more vulnerable plastic pieces. The desk mounts, being more durable, simply have some foam cover to prevent scratches in transit. For what these pieces are, the cushioning seems adequate, as the product arrived without any scratches, bends, or damaged parts. Always practice safe cutting procedures when using a knife. Now, to the meat and potatoes of what is actually in this package. 2 boxes within a box. Boxception! The first box here contains the user manual, 2 USB 2.0 to USB-C connectors, both MPDs in bubble wrap, and, Sweden sure likes sending lollipops, don't they? I mean, they certainly do. Sweeten the deal. Alright, anyway. Last but not least, some backing cards to put between the MPDs and the mounts. Alternatively, you can mount some small monitors behind the MPDs and get them working with your DCS setup. This was not offered in any of Total Control's options and therefore is outside the scope of this review. Also, since I'm a man-child, I have to pop these bubbles. Shut up, you would too. Now, the desk mount box contains, you guessed it, the frames and screws for the desk mounts. Hey, look, another lollipop too. Thank you, Total Controls. Now, to note, these frames are built from sturdy steel sheet metal, and I would argue are overkill for what's being mounted to them, but you can be rest assured that you won't have to worry about these MPDs breaking if you bump into them, seeing as the MPDs themselves are made out of molded plastic. It's sturdy for regular operation, but could be susceptible to breaking if it's torqued or warped without added support. Now, if you purchase just the Apache MPDs without the mounts, then no assembly is required. However, if you're like me and went with the desk mounts, then you will have to assemble the mounts themselves. Full disclosure, Total Controls mentions on the website that the hex keys for the screws are not included. If you're like me from the US and don't get all of my furniture from a certain Swedish outlet, then you might be lost on what M4 and M5 screws would be. Essentially, an Allen wrench kit from major US outlets will satisfy your requirement for hex keys that fit. Anything that contains both a 3mm and 4mm hex key. I would argue the instructions are also as simplistic as a certain Swedish outlet, but you have to appreciate the effort, right? Now, once you've assembled both mounts, you can screw on the MPDs, and if you'd like, you can also include the backboards. I opted to. Now find a nice piece of real estate on your desk for these bad boys and use the vice clamp to secure it in place. Finally, look for the USB-C port on the bottom of the MPDs, connect the cable, and connect the other end to your PC. I recommend at this point investing in a powered USB hub if you haven't already, as this requires 2 USB ports. Once the MPDs are plugged in, Windows will automatically install the drivers and you are almost good to go. Some more quick cheat codes here simply so you can make sure that these are set up correctly. Pressing the TSD button and the leftmost OSD push button and pressing the 4 bottom OSD push buttons on the left panel will adjust your light brightness going from off near the bottom to full bright at the top. Finally, to make sure Windows and DCS both understand which MPD is your left, center, or right MPDs, TSD and bottom left OSD, in addition to the first 3 OSD push buttons on the top of the panel, program the frame for left, center, and right MPD respectively. Now, you might look at these MPD frames and think, woo boy, that is a lot of buttons.
No, that's a lot of buttons.
31 of them per frame to be exact. That's not counting the 3 rotary knobs that come with it as well. The buttons, of course, mimic the placement of the real-world Apache's MPDs, complete with a brightness potentiometer, video potentiometer, and the 3-way rotary knob for day, night, and mono selection modes. Clicking through the buttons and diodes yields virtually no delay between input and output via DCS and are very clicky and responsive. There is a very strong tactile feel with these buttons, and yes, they come with raised reference bumps for the valued viewers who'd like to enjoy this product in VR. With that in mind, it's what you came here for, button ASMR time. So, what separates the Total Control MPDs from a few other MFDs on the market? First of all, buttons. All the buttons. I'll be making comparisons between the MPDs from Total Controls versus MFDs available from WinWing, Thrustmaster, and CubeSim. All these MFDs are modeled roughly around compatibility for airframes that use only 5 push buttons per side, such as the FA-18, the F-16, the A-10, and the Harrier. WinWing is unique in this field as it offers stealth buttons in between the OSD push buttons, but these are not exclusively represented.
I'm just a gunner, I don't do anything, so I'm safe.
Can you use the Apache MPDs to fill in for other airframes such as the FA-18 and the F-16? With more than enough buttons to go around for each frame, the answer is a resounding yes. But what about using MFDs for the Apache? No, not quite. The only MFD that can technically handle the upgrade to the Apache would be the WinWing MFDs with their stealth buttons. But come on, that's cheating. Out of all of the options here, the Apache MPD is the only one that offers robust support for VR users with tactile buttons and raised bumps so you know where your fingers are in relation to the controls. None of the MFDs offer these options with the exception of CubeSim that offers a little bit of a clicky feel to the button presses. Everybody else has been described as mushy button pushes. Ew. WinWing, CubeSim, and Thrustmaster all use external software to customize the use of your MFDs, which is just another program you need to have on your PC. Total Controls offers true plug-and-play here, as all customization is within the hardware. As a matter of fact, Eagle Dynamics themselves have incorporated a pre-programmed profile whenever you plug in the Total Controls Apache MPDs so that you don't need to set up keybinds. It's ready to go out of the box, assuming you have already assigned the MPDs to their respective panels. Now, earlier I had mentioned the MPDs themselves were made out of molded plastic. This could possibly mean lower product quality, right? Not necessarily. Compared to the CubeSim and Cougar MFDs especially, the mix of plastic for the frame and knobs complement the rubber push buttons and the steel desk mounts. The only rival here is perhaps WinWing. Alright, so let's take a look at places where the Apache MPDs could be weaker versus the MFDs. Some of these topics will be subjective, so keep that in mind as we continue with the critique. Natively, Total Controls does not offer a screen behind the panel to replicate the displays within DCS. Total Controls mentioned this could be an option in the future if there was enough demand for it. In the meantime, they have stated it would be cheaper to source your own screens and assemble it DIY. WinWing and CubeSim, however, offer their MFDs with a screen attached. These options will bring up your price though. Also, keep in mind that the screens won't matter to VR users, so this gripe isn't a solid negative to the Apache MPDs. As of the recording of this video, Total Control stands as the most expensive option without the use of screens. The base price does not include VAT and shipping charges if you are in the EU. Now, this does not directly translate to how much bang for your buck you get. Remember that the Apache MPDs have more buttons than MFDs for other airframe needs, so this would be an investment that is versatile. At the prices for the CubeSim and Thrustmaster Cougar MFDs, they wouldn't extend to full usability for the Apache. So this next one very much comes down to your own personal preference and how much room you have to work with. The Apache MPDs are 8.4 by 8.4 inches compared to the Cougar MFDs sitting at a modest 5.5 by 5.5 inches. However, this works in favor for VR users. On top of that, the Apache MPDs are at a 1-to-1 scale to the real MPDs of the Apache. Just something to keep in mind if you have low space on your desktop. I will leave the product dimensions here on screen for you to review. Personally, space isn't an issue for me, but I also have a 63-inch desk. So, perhaps some eagle-eyed of you may have noticed I didn't mention Tech Creations' Apache MPDs in the comparison. This isn't meant to be a bash on Tech Creations, but for the price of 2 MPDs, you get just the frames, meaning no supplied options for desk mounts, and the frames themselves are 3D printed with laser-cut plastic buttons. This offers some tactile feedback, but not much support on the VR side as it lacks the raised reference bumps on the buttons. At about $155 US per frame, you simply aren't getting as much bang for your buck. Sorry, Tech Creations. A few things I would love to see incorporated in the future would be an option to purchase an MPD kit with native screens. This would replicate the displays within DCS for instant feedback of the button pushes so that I wouldn't have to look at the button I push and then back to the monitor to verify the input. Again, not an issue for VR users, but non-VR users would appreciate that a little bit even if it adds another $75 to $100 to the price. In addition, if you want to use the Apache MPDs in an airframe other than the Apache, Eagle Dynamics has not made pre-made profiles outside the Apache controls. So this means programming hotkeys for other aircraft MFDs. It would be nice to see Total Controls offer button profiles like they have with the multifunction button box. In the unlikely event you encounter issues with your MPDs, you can reach out to Total Controls on their website, totalcontrols.eu. In my experience with their support, I received the answers I needed within 6 to 12 hours of inquiry. They're very attentive and will be able to easily guide you to a solution. To the valued viewers in the US, be mindful that Total Controls is in Sweden, so keep that in mind when waiting for a response. So, what's the verdict? Personally, I've seen improvement in my ability to navigate the cockpits, especially the Apaches. Having tactile buttons right there with a 1-to-1 input-output makes combat operations in the Apache much smoother, and it just feels more natural. The extra buttons makes this the most versatile MFD on the market while maintaining its immersive properties. So, if you're looking for an upgrade to your sim pit or you just really want something that mimics the real-world Apache's characteristics, then Total Control's Apache MPDs are what you're looking for, and are rivaled by no one. This is Gruntmeister, and I hope I've helped in your considerations and determining if the Total Control's Apache MPDs are the MPDs for you.